Commander Zlack-9 adjusted his optical sensors and tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The tactical display showed impossible readings. According to every instrument on his flagship, the Crimson Talon, there was only one defender left on Outpost Gamma 7.1. Human. Sir, his communications officer, Velkorth, chittered nervously. The scanners must be malfunctioning. There's no way a single organic could hold that position for 6 rotations. Zlack-9's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Oh, I assure you, Velkorth, our instruments are working perfectly, which makes this situation either hilarious or terrifying. I haven't decided which yet. The Kytherian fleet had been sieging this miserable rock for nearly a standard week. What started as a routine mop-up operation had turned into the most embarrassing military engagement in recent memory. 12,000 warriors, 57 battleships, and enough firepower to glass a small moon, all held at bay by whatever was holed up in that bunker. Tactical analysis. Zlack-9 barked. Lieutenant Nex Prime scuttled forward, his datapad trembling in his grip. Sir, the human has somehow maintained defensive fire from 17 different positions simultaneously. Our assault teams report coordinated suppression fire, strategic munitions deployment, and what appears to be. He paused, tactical taunting over open channels. Taunting? Yes, sir. Yesterday, the human broadcast a message suggesting our mothers were hamsters and our fathers smelled of elderberries. We are still trying to decode the cultural significance. Zlack-9's secondary eyes swiveled to focus on the tactical display. The outpost was nothing special, a supply depot on the edge of human space. The kind of place that should have surrendered the moment they showed up. Instead, it had become a fortress that had cost him 3 assault battalions and most of his dignity. Sir, Velkorth interrupted. Incoming transmission from the surface. Put it through. The voice that crackled through the speakers was distinctly human, with that peculiar accent from the outer colonies. Hey there, bud boys. This is Sergeant Rex Murphy, sole remaining defender of this here establishment. I wanted to thank you for the fireworks show. Real, pretty explosions you have been making. Shame they're all landing in empty dirt. Zlack-9 felt his blood pressure spike. Human, you are outnumbered 12,000 to 1. Surrender now, and we will grant you a warrior's death. 12,000? That's it? Hell, I was expecting at least 15. Y'all must have left the varsity team at home. The line went dead. Sir, Nex Prime ventured carefully. Perhaps we should reassess our approach. Reassess? Zlack-9's voice rose an octave. We have orbital superiority. We have numerical superiority. We have technological superiority. How is one human making us look like amateur space cadets? Well, sir, Velkorth said, consulting his tactical readouts. The human seems to be employing what our xenopsychology division calls creative problem solving. Yesterday, he jury-rigged the outpost's mining equipment into defensive turrets. Today, he's been using the facility's industrial replicators to manufacture improvised explosive devices. And this morning, Nex Prime added helpfully, he somehow hacked our communication array and rickrolled the entire fleet. Zlack-9 stared at his subordinates. He what? It's a human psychological warfare technique, sir. We are still analyzing the tactical implications of the accompanying dance moves. The commander's compound eyes began to twitch. In all his cycles of military service, through campaigns across 17 star systems, he had never encountered anything like this. The human military doctrine was supposed to be straightforward. Overwhelming firepower, coordinated tactics, and the occasional war crime. This was something else entirely. Sir, the communications array suddenly blazed to life. Emergency transmission from Admiral Kexvor on the Stellar Damnation. Put him through. The Admiral's 4 eyes appeared on the main screen, each one radiating barely contained fury. Commander Zlack-9, what is the status of Operation Gentle Breeze? Sir, we are experiencing minor delays. Minor delays? My intelligence reports indicate you have been stalled by a single human for 6 rotations. The High Command is asking questions I don't have answers for. Sir, the situation is fluid. Fluid? Commander, I have 3 more fleets breathing down my neck, asking why the mighty Kytherian Empire can't handle one backwater supply depot. The betting pools on Homeworld have you as a 10-to-1 underdog against a species that still uses projectile weapons. Zlak 9's mandibles clenched. Sir, if I may explain, no explanations. I want results. You have 12 hours to resolve this situation, or I'm sending in the Devastator Corps. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Sir, Velkorth said eventually, the Devastator Corps hasn't been deployed since the glassing of Mordak Prime. I'm aware of that, Lieutenant. They don't exactly specialize in surgical strikes, sir. Also aware, they have a tendency to overachieve. Get back to work. As his crew scattered, Zlak 9 turned back to the tactical display. The lone human signature pulsed mockingly on his screen. According to their files, Sergeant Rex Murphy was 32 standard years old, born on a farming colony, basic military training, no special forces background. On paper, he should have been dead 5 days ago. Instead, he had turned this simple operation into a comedy of errors that would haunt Zlak 9's career for the rest of his natural life. Sir, Next Prime approached cautiously. I have been analyzing the humans' defensive patterns. There's something unusual about them. Define unusual. Well, sir, he's not just defending. He's learning. Each attack we make, he adapts. Each tactic we try, he counters. Yesterday's assault failed because he'd analyzed our approach vectors from the previous day. This morning's bombardment was ineffective because he'd relocated all vital systems overnight. Zlak 9 felt a chill run down his exoskeleton. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, sir, that we might be dealing with a tactical genius who's been pretending to be a simple supply depot guard. The commander stared at the screen. Or, sir, or we might be dealing with something far worse. What could be worse than a tactical genius, sir? Zlak 9's voice dropped to a whisper. A bored human. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone in the fleet had heard the stories. Humans, when left to their own devices, had a tendency to improvise. The Battle of Kepler, 442, where a human maintenance crew had converted a cargo hauler into a weapons platform using nothing but spare parts and determination. The Siege of New Tuscany, where human civilians had held off an entire invasion force with homemade explosives and creative applications of farming equipment. But those were groups of humans. Multiple humans working together, pooling their collective insanity. This was one human. Alone, with 6 days to prepare and apparently nothing better to do. Sir, Velkorth's voice was barely audible. What are your orders? Zlak 9 considered his options. He could order another ground assault, though the last 3 had resulted in his troops requesting psychological counseling. He could increase the orbital bombardment, though the humans seemed to have developed an annoying habit of not being where the explosions were. He could try negotiation, though their previous attempts had resulted in detailed critiques of their military doctrine and suggestions for improvement that were both helpful and deeply insulting. Sir, Next Prime prompted. I'm thinking. The tactical display chimed. A new contact was approaching the outpost. Zlak 9's eyes widened as he read the signature. What in the name of the Void Mothers is that? Velkorth consulted his instruments. It appears to be a pizza delivery shuttle. A what? Pizza delivery, sir. According to the manifest, it's carrying 37 large pepperonis, 15 meat lovers, and something called extra cheese breadsticks. Zlak 9 watched in fascination as the tiny civilian craft approached their massive fleet, broadcasting a cheerful message about hot, fresh pizza and a 30-minute delivery guarantee. Are they seriously delivering food to a war zone? It appears so, sir. The delivery shuttle passed through their entire fleet formation without incident, landed at the outpost, and began unloading boxes. Sir, Next Prime said slowly, I'm reading multiple human life signs in that shuttle. Zlak 9's blood ran cold. How many? 12, sir. 12 pizzas. No, sir. 12 months. The commander felt his world tilt. Reinforcements? Unclear, sir. But they're all wearing matching uniforms. On the screen, They could see figures in red and blue jumpsuits carrying boxes toward the outpost. The lead figure stopped, turned toward the fleet, and gave them a cheerful wave. Zlak 9's mandibles began to foam. "Sir," Velkorth whispered, "what do we do?" The commander stared at the scene unfolding below. One human had already made his life a living nightmare. Now there were 13, and they had pizza. "Velkorth," he said finally, "get me Admiral Kexvor. Tell him we need to discuss new tactical parameters." "Sir." "And next prime." "Yes, sir. Start preparing the evacuation protocols." "Sir, we haven't even..." "Lieutenant, in my experience, when humans start sharing food, things are about to get exponentially worse for everyone else involved." As if on cue, the communications array crackled to life with Sergeant Murphy's voice, now noticeably more cheerful. "Attention, Kytherian fleet. This is Rex Murphy, still your friendly neighborhood pain in the thorax. I'd like to thank you for waiting while I had lunch. The pizza was excellent. My compliments to Tony's Galactic Pizzeria for their commitment to customer service, even in active war zones." Zlak 9 closed his eyes. "Now, then," Murphy continued, "I've got some friends here who wanted to meet you properly. Fair warning, though, they are from the Corps of Engineers, and they brought tools." The transmission ended. Zlak 9 looked at his tactical display, where 13 human signatures now glowed ominously on a screen. "Sir," Velkorth asked nervously. "Send a message to High Command," Zlak 9 said wearily. "Request immediate reinforcements." "How many, sir?" The commander watched as the humans began setting up what appeared to be construction equipment around the outpost perimeter. "All of them, Lieutenant. Request all of them." Admiral Kexvor's response came within the hour, and it wasn't encouraging. "Negative on reinforcements, Commander. High Command has decided this is a perfect training exercise. You have what you have. Make it work." Zlak 9 stared at the transmission device as if it had personally insulted his ancestors. "Training exercise? We are being systematically humiliated by a pizza party." But the Admiral had already cut the line, leaving the commander to contemplate his rapidly deteriorating situation. "Sir," Velkorth approached with his usual nervous energy, "the humans have been busy. Define busy. They have constructed what appears to be a miniature theme park around the outpost perimeter." Zlak 9's optical organs swiveled toward the main display. Where yesterday there had been simple defensive barriers, today there was an elaborate maze of tunnels, ramps, and what looked suspiciously like carnival games. Is that a bounce house?" "We believe so, sir. Our xenoarchaeology team suggests it might be a ritualistic combat arena. It's inflatable. Human warfare is notoriously unpredictable, sir." Through his enhanced optics, Zlak 9 could see the humans moving around their bizarre constructions with the casual efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing, even if nobody else did. Sergeant Murphy was directing operations from what appeared to be a lawn chair, occasionally pointing at things with a drink that had a tiny paper umbrella in it. "Sir," Next Prime interrupted, "we are receiving another transmission. Put it through." This time, a different human voice came through the speakers. Female, with the kind of cheerful professionalism that usually preceded very bad news. "Good afternoon, Kytherian Fleet. This is Lieutenant Kate Morrison, Corps of Engineers. We'd like to thank you for your patience while we have been setting up. We know waiting can be frustrating, especially when you're trying to conquer things." Zlak 9 felt his left antenna begin to twitch. "Now, we understand you've been having some difficulties with our friend Rex here, so we thought we'd help level the playing field a bit. We have made some improvements to the local infrastructure that we think you will find educational." "Educational," Zlak 9 muttered. "If you'd like to resume your assault, please feel free. We have prepared a variety of interactive learning experiences designed to help you understand why humans are generally considered poor candidates for easy conquest. Think of it as military science with a hands-on approach." The transmission ended with what sounded suspiciously like children's birthday party music. "Sir," Velkorth said carefully, "the troops are requesting permission to, and I quote, nope out of this entire situation." "Denied. We're not retreating from 13 humans and their death carnival." Sir, about that. Next Prime consulted his scanner readings. I'm now detecting 47 human life signs. Slack 9's compound eyes bulged. 47? How? It appears more pizza shuttles have been arriving, along with what our translators identify as hot dog vendors, cotton candy specialists, and something called a balloon artist. The commander watched in growing horror as his tactical display populated with more and more human signatures. What had started as a simple siege was becoming the galaxy's most terrifying county fair. Sir Velkorth ventured, perhaps we should consider alternative strategies, such as, well, we could try asking nicely. Slack 9's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Kytherian equivalent of hysterical laughter. Ask nicely? Lieutenant, we are the Kytherian Empire. We don't ask nicely. We demand, we threaten, we conquer. How's that working out for us so far, sir? The question hung in the air like a toxic spore cloud. Sir, the tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. Emergency reading from his surface. The humans they're doing something. On screen, the assembled humans had formed what appeared to be a conga line around their makeshift carnival. Leading the procession was Sergeant Murphy, now wearing what looked like a party hat and carrying a boombox that was blasting something the ship's computer identified as Earth Music subcategory. Inexplicably catchy. Are they dancing at us? Slack 9 whispered. I believe so, sir. It appears to be some form of psychological warfare. It's working. The conga line wound its way through the defensive installations, past the bounce house, around what might have been a popcorn stand, and finally formed a circle in front of the main bunker. The humans began what could only be described as synchronized movements. Sir, Next Prime said weakly, I think they are challenging us to a dance-off. A what? Human Cultural Database suggests this is a ritualized form of combat where opposing forces attempt to establish dominance through rhythmic movement. Slack 9 stared at the screen. They want to dance fight us. It appears so, sir. We are trained military professionals. Yes, sir. We have orbital bombardment capabilities. Correct, sir. We could glass this entire continent. Theoretically, sir. So why am I seriously considering learning the Macarena? Before anyone could answer, the communications array activated again. This time it was Sergeant Murphy, slightly out of breath but remarkably cheerful. Hey there, space bugs. That was just our warm-up routine. Hope you enjoyed the show. Now, we know you've been having trouble with your current approach, so we thought we'd offer you boys a deal. Slack 9 found himself leaning forward despite every instinct telling him this was a terrible idea. Here's what we are thinking, Murphy continued. You've got a lot of ships up there, and we have got a lot of creative energy down here. How about we settle this like civilized beings? Single combat. Champion versus champion. Winner takes all. Single combat. Slack 9's tactical mind began racing. One-on-one, they could choose their finest warrior, their most skilled fighter. This could actually work. Your best against our best, Murphy said. Hand-to-hand, no weapons, fair fight. What do you say? This was it. This was his chance to salvage the situation. Slack 9 activated his communicator. Human, we accept your challenge. Prepare to face the might of our greatest warrior. Excellent. When do you want to do this? We are pretty flexible. Gotta warn you though, our champion's been looking forward to some exercise. Immediately, prepare your fighter. Oh, he's ready. Been ready for days. Hey, just one quick question though. What? You wouldn't happen to have any dietary restrictions, would you? We are planning a little post-fight celebration, and we want to make sure everyone can enjoy the snacks. Slack 9 blinked. Snacks? Yeah, win or lose. Figure we'd all hang out afterward. Share some stories. Maybe play some card games. Build bridges, The commander felt reality tilt slightly. You want to have a party? Well, sure. After we settle this whole invasion thing, no reason we can't be friends, right? Besides, some of our folks have been curious about Kytherian culture. Thought this might be a good opportunity for cultural exchange. Slack 9 looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him with expressions that suggested they were witnessing their commander's complete mental breakdown. Cultural exchange, he repeated slowly. Absolutely. We have got some human games we could teach you. Ever hear of charades? Or 20 questions? Oh, and poker. You guys would probably be great at poker with all those eyes. Lieutenant, Zlak 9 said quietly to Velkorth. Am I having some kind of psychotic episode? I don't think so, sir. This appears to be actually happening. Human, Zlak 9 called out. Enough talk. Send down your champion. Roger that. He's on his way up. Up. Yeah. Figured we'd meet in the middle. Neutral ground and all. He's taking the express elevator. Zlak 9's sensors suddenly screamed warnings. Something was approaching his flagship. Something moving very, very fast. Sir, Next Prime shouted. Incoming projectile. On screen, they could see a figure rocketing toward them on what appeared to be a jury-rigged jetpack made from spare parts and sheer determination. The figure was humanoid, wearing what looked like overalls and a baseball cap, and appeared to be whooping with joy. Is he enjoying this? Velkorth whispered. The figure slammed into the ship's hull with a resounding clang, somehow managed to stick the landing, and began knocking on the airlock door. Sir, the computer announced in its maddeningly calm voice, we have a visitor. Zlak 9 stared at the external camera feed. The human was standing on his hull, in the vacuum of space, wearing nothing but work clothes and what appeared to be a fishbowl helmet connected to a garden hose, and he was waving. Let him in, Zlak 9 said faintly. Sir, let him in. The airlock cycled, and the human stepped aboard the Crimson Talon like he was visiting a neighbor. He was enormous by human standards, easily 2 meters tall, with arms like tree trunks and a smile that could power a small city. Howdy, he said, extending a hand the size of a dinner plate. I'm Big Tom Henderson, and I understand we're going to have ourselves a friendly competition. Zlak 9 stared at the offer hand. You are the champion? Well, I don't like to brag, but I did win the Outer Rim Arm Wrestling Championship 3 years running. Plus, I can bench press a hover truck, and I once ate 17 pies in a single sitting. Pies? Apple mostly. Some cherry. One unfortunate incident with mincemeat, but we don't talk about that. The commander felt the last of his sanity slip away like sand through his claws. Fine. Velkorth, clear the cargo bay. We're doing this. 20 minutes later, Zlak 9 found himself watching his finest warrior, Brakthul the Destroyer, square off against a human who was treating the whole thing like a weekend barbecue. Half his crew had gathered to watch, while the other half was placing bets. Now, Brak, Big Tom said conversationally as they circled each other, I want you to know there's no hard feelings here. This is just good, clean fun between friends. Brakthul, who had single-handedly conquered 3 worlds and whose name was whispered in terror across 7 star systems, looked utterly confused. Tom continued, after this is over, you will have to tell me about those planets you folks are from. Always been curious about different worlds. Do you have seasons? What's the food like? I bet you have got some interesting recipes. Brakthul lunged. Big Tom sidestepped, caught the Kytherian warrior in a bear hug, and gently set him down on his back. Good try. One go again. The cargo bay fell silent. Sir, Velkorth whispered, I think we lost. Zlak 9 watched as Big Tom helped Brakthul to his feet and began explaining the proper technique for a wrestling throw. His greatest warrior was nodding along and taking notes. Sir, Next Prime approached carefully. Your orders? The commander looked at his defeated champion, at his demoralized crew, at the human who was now teaching impromptu wrestling lessons to anyone interested. Then he looked at his tactical display, where the outpost was now hosting what appeared to be a full-scale carnival complete with a Ferris wheel that definitely hadn't been there that morning. Velkorth, he said finally, open a channel to the surface. Sir, I want to speak to Sergeant Murphy. The connection crackled to life. Rex here. How'd your boy do? Tom's been looking forward to a good match. Sergeant Murphy, Zlak 9 said carefully, hypothetically speaking, if we were to discontinue our current operation, what would happen? Well, hypothetically, I suppose we'd pack up our stuff and go back to whatever we were doing before you showed up. What? And if we were to express interest in your cultural exchange program? There was silence for a moment. Then, are you asking what I think you are asking? Zlak 9 looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him with expressions ranging from hope to disbelief. Sergeant Murphy, the Kytherian Empire would like to formally request a temporary ceasefire for the purpose of diplomatic relations. Hot damn, I will break out the good barbecue sauce. You like ribs? And that was how the most embarrassing military campaign in Kytherian history became the most successful cultural exchange program in galactic history. 3 months later, Admiral Kexvor received a report that left him staring at his communication device for nearly an hour. His forces were still at the outpost, not because they were still fighting, but because they'd opened the first interspecies community center in that sector of space. Apparently, Kytherians were surprisingly good at Carnival games, and humans were fascinated by Kytherian engineering techniques. Who knew? The report concluded with a note from Commander Zlak-9 requesting an extended tour of duty and permission to learn something called line dancing. The Admiral approved the request. He figured it was safer than trying to bring them home and explaining this to High Command. 6 months after what historians would later call the Great Barbecue Incident, Commander Zlak-9 found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. He was sitting in a lawn chair, wearing a Hawaiian shirt that Sergeant Murphy had insisted would bring out his natural coloring, watching his tactical officer Velkorth attempt to master the art of horseshoe throwing. "You are overthrowing it, buddy," called out Jake Martinez, one of the human engineers who'd arrived in the second wave of pizza deliveries. "Remember, it's all in the wrist action." Velkorth's compound eyes swiveled in concentration as he adjusted his grip on the horseshoe. His throw sailed through the air and landed with a satisfying clang around the stake. "Ringer!" shouted Big Tom Henderson, who had become something of a permanent fixture at the outpost. "That's what I'm talking about." Zlak-9 shook his head in amazement. 3 days ago, Velkorth had been calculating bombardment trajectories. Now he was celebrating a successful horseshoe toss with the enthusiasm of a newly hatched grub discovering its first meal. "Commander," a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Rex Murphy approached, carrying 2 bottles of what the humans called beer. "How are you settling in?" "I'm not entirely sure," Zlak-9 admitted, accepting the beverage. "My species doesn't typically engage in recreational activities during military campaigns." "Well, technically speaking, the military campaign's over. This is what we call post-conflict community building. Is that what we are calling it?" Rex grinned. "Sounds better than that time we accidentally made friends with an invasion force, don't you think?" Zlak-9 took a sip of his beer and watched as Lieutenant Nex Prime attempted to learn something called cornhole from a group of human civilians who had somehow materialized from nearby colonies. Word had spread about the unusual ceasefire, and apparently humans had an irresistible urge to investigate anything that sounded interesting. "Rex," Zlak-9 said thoughtfully, "can I ask you something?" "Shoot. Were you really just a supply depot guard?" Murphy's grin widened. "Well, that's a bit of a story. See, I used to be in special operations. Did 3 tours in the Centauri conflicts, a couple of classified missions I can't talk about. Retired out here because I wanted somewhere quiet." "Quiet? Yeah, funny how that worked out. Truth is, when your fleet showed up, I figured I had 2 choices: die heroically or get creative. And dying heroically sounded like a lot of paperwork for whoever found my body." Zlak-9 felt his mandibles twitch, and what he was learning was the human equivalent of a chuckle. "So you decided to improvise. Seemed like the thing to do. Plus, I was curious to see how long I could keep it up. Turned into kind of a personal challenge. You held off our entire fleet as a personal challenge." "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds crazy." "It was crazy. Yeah, but it was fun crazy. The good kind." Across the makeshift community center, Zlak-9 could see more of his crew engaged in various human activities. His communications officer was learning to play something called poker and was apparently quite good at it, thanks to his species' natural inability to display emotions through facial expressions. His weapons specialist had discovered an affinity for grilling and was currently engaged in a detailed discussion about marinades with a human chef. "Commander," Big Tom's voice boomed across the area. "We're starting up a volleyball game. You in?" Zlak-9 looked at Rex, who shrugged. "Volleyball's good exercise. Plus, with your height and those extra arms, you'd probably be pretty decent at it. I don't even know what volleyball is." "That's the beauty of it. Half the fun is figuring it out as you go. 20 minutes later, Zlak 9 found himself on one side of a net, trying to understand the rules of a game that seemed to involve hitting a ball back and forth without letting it touch the ground. His team consisted of 3 humans, 2 of his junior officers, and something called a golden retriever that belonged to one of the colonists and seemed to think the ball was a toy meant specifically for him. "Okay, everyone ready," called Sarah Kim, a human botanist who had appointed herself as referee. "Remember, we are playing friendly rules, so no spike kills and everybody rotates." "What's a spike kill?" Zlak 9 asked. "Something you probably shouldn't do on your first game," Rex said diplomatically. Serve came over the net, a gentle lob that sailed towards Zlak 9. Instinctively, he reached out with all 4 arms and caught it. "No catching," laughed Maria Santos, one of the human engineers. "You have got to hit it." "Hit it where?" "Back over the net." "How hard?" "Not too hard." "What's too hard?" "You will know when you see it." Zlak 9 stared at the ball in his hands. Military Academy had prepared him for tactical analysis, strategic planning, and leadership under pressure. It had not prepared him for recreational ball games with confusing rules and enthusiastic participants. He tossed the ball up and gently tapped it with one hand. It sailed over the net in a perfect arc and landed softly in the sand on the other side. "Nice serve," called out Jake Martinez from the opposing team. "Your turn to rotate." "Rotate to where?" "Just move one position clockwise." "Which way is clockwise?" The game continued in this fashion for nearly an hour, with Zlak 9 gradually beginning to understand both the rules and the peculiar joy humans seemed to find in activities that served no apparent strategic purpose. By the end, he was actually enjoying himself, despite the fact that his team had lost spectacularly. "Not bad for a first-timer," Rex said as they walked off the makeshift court. "You have got good instincts." "I spent most of the game confused." "Yeah, that's pretty normal. Volleyball's one of those games that makes perfect sense once you have played it enough, and no sense at all when you're learning. Like human military tactics." Exactly like human military tactics. As the sun began to set over the outpost, Zlak 9 found himself participating in what Rex called a cookout. Apparently, this involves standing around open flames, cooking various forms of meat, and engaging in conversation about topics that had nothing to do with military strategy or galactic conquest. "So," said Dr. Amanda Foster, a xenobiologist who had arrived that morning to study the unprecedented interspecies cooperation, "what's your homeworld like?" Zlak 9 considered the question. "Kytheria Prime is efficient. Everything is organized for maximum productivity. Climate-controlled cities, regulated food distribution, scheduled recreational periods. Scheduled recreation, twice weekly, for exactly 47 minutes. The humans around the fire exchanged glances. "That sounds..." Dr. Foster searched for the right word, "structured." "It's logical. Excessive recreation leads to decreased productivity." "But what about fun?" asked Big Tom, who was manning the grill with the focused intensity of a master craftsman. "Fun. You know, doing things just because they make you happy." Zlak 9's compound eyes blinked in confusion. "But why would you do something just for happiness? Shouldn't activities serve a greater purpose?" "Sometimes the greater purpose is happiness," Rex said quietly. "Sometimes taking care of yourself and enjoying life is the most important thing you can do." "But that's..." Zlak 9 paused, trying to process this concept. "That's incredibly inefficient." "Yeah," said Jake Martinez with a grin, "but it's also incredibly human." As the evening progressed, Zlak 9 found himself drawn into conversations about art, music, literature, and dozens of other topics that would have been considered frivolous back on Kytheria Prime. The human seemed endlessly curious about his culture, asking thoughtful questions about Kytherian philosophy, technology, and social structures. "So you have never had ice cream?" Maria Santos asked with the kind of horror usually reserved for war crimes. "What is ice cream?" "Oh, this is tragic. Tom, we have an ice cream emergency." "On it," Big Tom called back, already rummaging through one of the portable freezers that had somehow appeared as part of the expanding Carnival point 10 minutes later. Zlak 9 found himself holding a cone filled with what the humans described as frozen sweetened dairy product, and trying to understand why his first taste had caused several of his crew members to make noises of contentment that bordered on the obscene. This is, he paused, searching for the right word, extraordinary. Wait until you try chocolate, Rex said with the expression of someone planning a pleasant ambush. There are different kinds. Oh, buddy, we have got so much to show you. The evening continued with what could only be described as a cultural immersion program disguised as a social gathering. Slack9 learned about human music, discovering that his species' natural rhythm made them surprisingly good at something called line dancing. He participated in a game called Charades that nearly broke his brain with its complete lack of logical structure. He listened to stories about human colonies, human families, and human dreams. And somewhere in the middle of it all, watching his crew laugh and play and discover joy in pointless activities, Slack9 realized something that would probably get him court-martialed if he ever returned to Kytheria Prime. He didn't want to go home. Rex, he said quietly as the party began to wind down. Can I ask you another question? Always. What happens now? I mean, eventually my superiors are going to want to report. They're going to want to know why we haven't conquered this outpost. Rex was quiet for a moment, watching as Velkorth attempted to teach a group of human children a traditional Kytherian game that involved complex mathematical calculations and apparently no actual fun. Well, he said finally, seems to me you have got a choice to make. What kind of choice? You can go back to being Commander Slack9 of the Kytherian Empire, conqueror of worlds and follower of orders. Or, he paused, you can figure out who you want to be when no one's telling you what to do. Slack9 looked around at the scene before him. His crew was integrated seamlessly with the human civilians, sharing food and stories and laughter. Lieutenant Next Prime was teaching a human child how to calculate hyperspace trajectories using finger math. Big Tom was arm wrestling with Brackthul and losing on purpose. Much to the delight of their audience, that IT was chaos. It was inefficient. It was completely contrary to everything he'd been taught about proper military conduct. IT was also the happiest he'd ever been. Rex, he said slowly, hypothetically speaking, what would happen if a Kytherian commander decided he didn't want to be a Kytherian commander anymore? Hypothetically? I'd say that's between him and his conscience. But if he needed a place to figure things out, well, Rex gestured around the bustling community center. We have got plenty of room for folks who want to start over. And if his crew wanted to stay with him, like I said, plenty of room. Slack9 nodded slowly. Tomorrow, he would have to make a decision that would change everything. Tonight, he was going to learn how to make esmores. It seemed like a reasonable compromise. The stars came out over the little outpost that had accidentally become the most successful diplomatic venture in recent galactic history. Commander Slack9 of the Kytherian Empire sat around a campfire, listening to humans tell stories about their childhoods, and wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than conquest and duty that he was pretty sure there was. And for the first time in his military career, he was looking forward to finding out.